San Francisco earthquake and fire, April 18, 1906. One of the most devastating natural disasters in U.S. history, the San Francisco earthquake struck at 5:12 a.m., with a magnitude estimated between 7.8 and 8.3. The earthquake itself caused widespread damage, but it was the fires that followed, lasting for several days, that caused the most destruction. Over 80% of San Francisco was destroyed, and more than 3,000 people were killed. The fire was so intense that it left the city in ruins, with 250,000 people left homeless. The earthquake exposed the vulnerability of cities to natural disasters and prompted changes in building codes and disaster preparedness, not just in San Francisco, but across the country. It also had a significant impact on the city's infrastructure and economy, which took years to recover. Pure Food and Drug Act, June 30, 1906. This groundbreaking legislation marked the beginning of federal consumer protection in the United States. The Pure Food and Drug Act was passed in response to growing public concern about the safety and quality of food and medicine. The public was outraged by revelations about unsafe practices in the food and drug industries, especially after the publication of Upton Sinclair's novel The Jungle, which exposed unsanitary conditions in meatpacking plants. The act prohibited the sale of adulterated or mislabeled food and drugs, and it required products to meet certain purity standards. It also laid the foundation for the creation of the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, which would become the primary regulatory body for food and drugs in the U.S., ensuring the safety of consumer products. Meat Inspection Act, June 30, 1906. Passed on the same day as the Pure Food and Drug Act, the Meat Inspection Act was another important piece of legislation aimed at regulating the food industry. It specifically addressed the unsanitary conditions in the meatpacking industry, as detailed in Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. The law mandated strict inspection of all livestock before slaughter and set standards for meatpacking facilities to ensure that the meat processed was safe for consumption. Inspectors were also required to monitor the cleanliness of the facilities and ensure that meat was properly labeled. This act was significant because it represented a shift toward federal oversight of the food industry, ensuring that public health and safety were prioritized in an era of rapid industrialization. The Hepburn Act, June 29, 1906. The Hepburn Act was one of the most significant pieces of legislation passed during President Theodore Roosevelt's administration, aimed at strengthening the federal government's ability to regulate big businesses, particularly the railroads. The act gave the Interstate Commerce Commission, ICC, the authority to set maximum railroad rates and extended its jurisdiction to cover bridges, terminals, ferries, and oil pipelines. Before the Hepburn Act, railroads held significant power, often charging excessive rates, which hurt small farmers and businesses. The Hepburn Act curbed this power by ensuring that rates were reasonable and just, helping to prevent monopolistic practices. The law marked a key moment in Roosevelt's broader trust-busting policies, where he sought to limit the power of large corporations and promote fair competition in the marketplace. The Antiquities Act, June 8, 1906. The Antiquities Act of 1906 was a landmark conservation law signed by President Theodore Roosevelt, giving the president the authority to create national monuments to protect significant natural, cultural, or historic sites. This law was a response to the growing concerns about the destruction of important archaeological and natural resources, especially in the western United States. Under the Antiquities Act, Roosevelt designated several important sites, including Devil's Tower in Wyoming and the Grand Canyon, as protected areas. This act was the first U.S. law to establish federal protection of historical and cultural landmarks, and it laid the groundwork for future conservation efforts and the establishment of the national park system. The law empowered the president to act swiftly in preserving lands of scientific, historical, or cultural importance, safeguarding these treasures for future generations. The founding of the U.S. Forest Service, 1906. In 1906, the U.S. Forest Service was officially established as part of a larger movement toward environmental conservation led by President Theodore Roosevelt. The Forest Service was tasked with managing public forest lands to prevent overexploitation, regulate logging, and ensure the sustainable use of natural resources. Gifford Pinchot, a key figure in the conservation movement, was appointed as the first chief of the Forest Service. Under Pinchot's leadership, the agency embraced the principle of conservation through wise use, meaning forests and other natural resources should be utilized but managed responsibly to prevent depletion. The founding of the Forest Service marked a turning point in the U.S. approach to natural resources, moving away from unchecked exploitation toward long-term stewardship, and it remains a key agency in the management and preservation of the nation's forests. Resolution of the Alaska Boundary Dispute, 1906. The Alaska Boundary Dispute, a territorial disagreement between the United States and Canada, then part of the British Empire, was resolved in 1906. This dispute centered around the exact borders of Alaska, particularly in the region of the Alaska Panhandle, a long, narrow strip of territory along the Pacific coast. When the U.S. purchased Alaska from Russia in 1867, the exact boundary had not been clearly defined, leading to tensions, especially after gold was discovered in the nearby Klondike region. Both countries wanted access to the valuable land and potential resources. A tribunal of American, British, and Canadian representatives was formed to resolve the issue, and in 1906, the boundary was officially defined in favor of the United States. This decision solidified U.S. control over key areas of Alaska, which would become increasingly important as the territory grew in economic and strategic significance. Launch of the Victrola phonograph, 1906. In 1906, the Victor Talking Machine Company introduced the Victrola, a revolutionary new type of phonograph that brought recorded music into American homes. Unlike earlier models, which were large and had an exposed horn, the Victrola featured a sleek, furniture-like cabinet with the horn hidden inside, making it much more appealing for home use. This innovation made the phonograph more accessible and popular among middle-class households, changing the way people experienced music. Before the Victrola, live performances were the primary way people enjoyed music. But now, for the first time, they could listen to recorded music in their homes at any time. This marked the beginning of the home entertainment industry and the widespread commercialization of music, laying the groundwork for the modern music industry. First Grand Prix in the U.S., the Vanderbilt Cup, 1906. The Vanderbilt Cup race, held on Long Island in 1906, marked the first major automobile race in the United States, showcasing the growing interest in car racing and the rise of the automobile as a symbol of modernity. Organized by William Kissam Vanderbilt II, a wealthy racing enthusiast, the Vanderbilt Cup became a prestigious event that attracted international attention. It highlighted the technological advancements in automobile design and manufacturing, as well as the increasing popularity of cars in America. This race was part of a broader cultural shift toward the automobile, which was transforming American society by providing new forms of transportation, entertainment, and industrial development. The success of the Vanderbilt Cup helped to popularize motor racing in the U.S., paving the way for the development of American motorsports, including events like the Indianapolis 500. Selig Polyscope Company founded, 1906. In 1906, the Selig Polyscope Company, one of the first major film studios in the U.S., was founded in Chicago by William Selig. This company played a key role in the early development of the American film industry. Before the establishment of dedicated film studios, movies were short, experimental, and produced on a small scale. Selig's company helped professionalize the industry by producing more structured, narrative films and bringing together the resources and talent needed for larger productions. Selig Polyscope was also known for producing some of the first American films featuring Western themes, which would go on to become a staple genre in Hollywood. The founding of this company marked the beginning of a new era for the film industry, which would rapidly grow into one of the most important cultural and economic forces in the 20th century.